All right, part four. We are wrapping up our painting here. It's a rainy day in Paris. We have a beautiful atmosphere of some rain, some mist, some interesting figures chatting here on the sidewalk underneath a nice, beautiful red canopy. And we're working out some more ideas. We have some cars over here on the left. We're going to put some detail on the cars. We have another figure walking on the sidewalk here. We'll develop that a little more. So I want to do a few more details, but again, this is just a composition, small composition, um, but still, it's good to work on it and kind of work out the ideas that you're kind of going to formulate, so that when you're going to maybe do a finished painting of this exact type here in this style, you'll kind of have worked some ideas out on a smaller composition like this. So that's why I would suggest making these small compositions and working on these, and then just up the upping the size of your paper, and then you can have an easier time of your painting because you've already worked out some ideas and practiced it a couple times, and then you're ready to go for a finished painting on this specific scene here of a nice, beautiful rainy day in Paris. Um, so now let me get started again. I'm going to just grab some water on a paper towel, and I'm going to tidy up my palette just a little bit. Um, with this type of a painting, since we're doing a lot of color mixing and using a lot of water for the most part, I let the colors mix a little bit on the palette, and kind of makes a nice effect on the paper, having some more blended colors. So now here, while this was drying, I had a couple ideas. I wanted to work out some more ideas. Of course, our main color in this painting really, um, or tone, is the sepia tone, mixed with a little bit of yellow ochre, and sometimes a little bit of blue, some French ultramarine blue. But here I just wanted to, I've been using a sponge as well to tap off some paint to dry my brush a little bit. So here I tap off some paint, and then I want to try to get a couple lines on the sidewalk here, just to make it a little interesting. It looked a little bit boring, just the way it was. So now we have a little bit of splashing on there. Okay, so that's a little bit of the sidewalk details, and I'd like to work on this figure a little bit here. So we'll do that. Again, now we're using smaller brushes, so we're using small round brushes. This is a number 2. So I'll put some reflections in there. And then we'll get some red, some yellow ochre. We'll put a face there. Person's carrying maybe a coat or a jacket, and maybe a briefcase or a bag or something here, just to give it a little more detail. And we're going to go back with some white highlights when we're all completed, and we'll do some white highlights, just a touch here and there on some of the figures. Another thing I wanted to do was um, a little bit of some interesting light effects. And we'll do some more And I have a couple more here. That gives us that rainy feel when you have some of the tail lights kind of just misting onto the ground a little bit. And then you can go back and maybe do a little zigzag here and there. I think it looks good that way. Just it'll blend out a little bit more. I think that looks okay. And I think I saw maybe a little bit of a sign over here. So I'm working in some details here. And sometimes you have to go over a couple times, a second time or so. Sometimes the paint soaks into the paper and you kind of lose the effect of it. So we have some lights there. Um, and sometimes I'll just do a little more detail to the car window, the back window of that car. Um, Cars tend to be pretty difficult when you first start doing them, but the more you practice them, the easier they get. And I noticed that maybe not going with so much detail on cars, because cars are, if you kind of just get the basic shape of them, they usually work out pretty good without going too far into detail. Like I wouldn't go into real detail with the tires and everything. That to me just seems like too much information. So here, if we see the tail lights and the tops of the cars, pretty much, and just the overall shape, perfect. That tells you the story that you have cars over here going down the street. No need to say, that's steel belted radial on that tire, and this one here is needs a little air, whatever. It's just if we can just get the basic idea of the car, we don't need to go into all minute details on that those cars here in the distance. That's the middle distance, so I would say that's doesn't need too much detail. Here are the figures. We're going to do a little some highlights on those. We said. I had a few other ideas. Let me see. Again, sometimes it's better to underfinish a painting. So here we're going to maybe underfinish this one a little bit. So maybe we might just do a few more things and then leave it as it is, and then maybe tomorrow we can go back and say to ourselves, yeah, that could maybe use just a few more details here and there, or I missed something that I need to do. But it's better to kind of let it sit for maybe a day, and then come back and look at it. And again, taking breaks is real important. Take lots of breaks. Does that make sense? Take breaks, because sometimes when we go too long, like after about 20 minutes or half an hour, then it just gets to be where we start to lose our focus, and the next thing you know, we're doing something and we're working in an area we shouldn't be working in because it's wet, and the paper starts, the paint starts to bleed or blossom, or areas get out of control, or so forth. So I think these YouTube videos for the 15-minute time spans, those seem to be perfect. Painting for 15 minutes and then giving it a break for 10 or 15 minutes and then coming back and then doing 15 to 20 minute increments seems to be really, really good. It helps your concentration levels stay at a peak state versus maybe getting a little bit tired and then sometimes, not thinking as clearly. So here we have some titanium white paint. for our highlights, and then we take a little yellow ochre. We take our yellow ochre and we put some just in the top portion of the paint tube, just to put a little bit of color into that white, to make it a little bit of a warm white. So we did that. We get that on our brush. We roll our brush around so that we get a nice point on it. So we get a nice point on the brush like that. And then we can do some shoulders and some, maybe a little highlight on the top of the hair. Jacket there maybe. This person here. Maybe on the car over here. That looks like that could use a detail there. That looks good. Okay, so just those few highlights, not too much. Maybe a little bit across this light. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of that white, roll it around with a tiny bit of water, and I'm just going to do a little bit of splashing. That gives us a little bit of the feeling of rain, a little bit of that speckly feel. Not too much, that's it, just a little tiny bit. And that'll sort of blend into the paper. That'll look a little less noticeable once this dries. I'm pretty happy with this so far. I think it's good. I think this is a good composition to practice on. We learned a lot in this composition. We'll peel off the tape and just see how it looks with a nice crisp edge around the outside. And that looks much better with a crisp edge around it. Almost like we've put a mat on it and it's isolated nicely with a nice border. So we learned here to do our glazings, two or three part glazings, basically 2-part glazing. Our first glazing was the nice light colors, right? The light blue up top, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, some alizarin crimson, little bits of that with some water. So, you know, a light wash of water over it with some subtle colors, nothing too heavy in colors. We let that dry 15-20 minutes, and then we came back in and we started adding in our darks and our medium to dark tonal values and colors, our red canopy and our darks underneath for the building and our figures and the roadway here. And basically we use mostly the sepia tone paint, Winsor & Newton sepia tone paint mixed with a little bit of yellow ochre, some raw sienna, also some French ultramarine blue in there, and some cerulean blue for the roadway. So we kind of mixed our sepia tone paint color with different colors, you know, the ones we just mentioned, to kind of give variations in it. So we just didn't use the straight sepia tone, which would look kind of boring. So we have a good overall feel, and I hope you like this, and we will be back soon to do another painting. I think I'm going to try to stick with a format now where we'll do smaller compositions and learn a lot of things in those smaller compositions and practice them over and over. And then once we start going into a larger painting, we already have a good, strong, solid technique going into a larger painting, and then it'll flow a lot smoother. So we'll see you on the next video. Everyone, happy painting, and knowledge is power.